We've had some amazing guests this past year who are great examples of purpose, of growth, and of leadership. These people have had a great impact on me, and we've gotten a great response from you, and we want to bring these back, the best of these discussions to you as we go into next year. These people lead at a high level, and they're impacting a lot of people. They're really clear not on just what they're doing, but why they're doing it. And I think that's a key differentiator. Recently, we reflected on powerful moments with local heroes, but this week we go broader than that. We revisit the most impactful conversations from all of 2025. And this is a perfect reminder for me, for you, and others that as we go into the next year, we need to live purposefully, we need to grow, and we need to be leaders and lead by example. You're going to love it. Check it out. And I just want to talk about the topic of identity a little bit because we've talked about it. So tell me about maybe how you see yourself and how should we see ourselves? Like, because you talk about it in the book as well.
Yeah, I think identity is important. In a lot of my talks, I talk about the four most important questions that everybody has to answer in life of, who am I? Why am I here? Where am I going? And how will I get there? And I love your podcast. I listen to a lot of the episodes and you talk about that having that mission, having that purpose. And I think that starts with our identity. And I've always told people we can't really, answer the question, who am I, until we answer the question, who is God? Who is that creator? Where did we come from? And so that's kind of always been the foundation of my identity. I try not to identify myself by my success or my failure, what I've accomplished and my achievements, where I've messed up or where I've failed. But I define myself really by my baptism and my faith that I am a son of the Father. Losing my dad was a big part of my journey. And when I lost my dad back in 2008, he was a huge influence in my life. That guy that I always looked to, I asked, and when he was gone, I felt like, a little bit lost in that sense. And I think it took losing my father on earth before I realized I had a father in heaven. And I kind of, really understood that a little bit more and grasped that as my identity instead of worrying about how successful I am or what other people think or what my business analytics are or any of that kind of stuff. But if I can root myself as a son of the Father, and then I'm created for a purpose and for a mission, and then I can seek that great mission that, kind of Matthew Kelly set me on that journey. He calls it becoming the best version of yourself. I've called it becoming a saint, making the journey of life, that return to the Father, that our goal, that my mission has always been heaven. I want to go there. I want to become, the best version of myself, as he would say. And that is rooted around my identity as a son of the Father. And I think that's important with all the aspects of my jobs and my ministries and everything that I do.
Yeah. And what I think is important is a lot of times we can identify with different roles in our life or different areas of life. Like, so I'm a parent, or I'm a spouse, or I am a leader at a company, or I own a company, or I'm a real estate investor. And you can be those things, but and you correct me here, but if you're ultimately those things, those are things that can be stripped away from you completely. Whereas I think the important question is like, what is your ultimate identity? Like, who are you at your deepest core? And I think for that not to be stripped away, the only thing that I can be is a person of faith. For us, it's Christian, Catholic, but I think it has to be like, I think we have to know who we are. And I think maybe the point is it's dangerous to identify ourselves too strongly with something that can be taken away from us, because that's when we run into identity crisis or other things. And it sounds like you kind of had that a little bit at your younger age, which look, so if that's happening, okay, why is this happening? And go back to your 4 questions. Who is God? And think through those things and just do a lot of, introspective work and dig deeper and find out why, and really dig into who you are, because that can guide then, if you start there, I think that can guide your, sub identities or other identities. Like, okay, what kind of parent are you going to be? Things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I say. It's not like a class in school or one subject of many. I tell people all the time, when I'm doing, Catholic ministry or I'm doing, retreats, that, if you want your child to be a great athlete, great, teach them the faith, teach them virtue. You want them to have successful businesses, great, teach them that faith, teach them that virtue. If you want them to have successful relationships and marriages, when we identify with that ultimate goal, that ultimate purpose, then all these other little things we do in life do have purpose. They do have meaning. That I'm an eye doctor because it's helping me become a saint. It's helping me become the best version of myself. I'm a father,
Correct.
because it's helping me become the best version of myself, to become the saint I was created to be. So my sports make a lot of sense, and my sports were a big part of my life. They taught me all these virtues, but those things were in a purpose of not becoming a champion in the sense of that's the ultimate goal, or to winning a trophy, but to finish with nothing left to give. Same thing with business, same thing with family. And everything makes sense if that ultimate purpose revolves around that identity of a son of the Father, that I'm here to make a journey to become a saint, that I'm going to heaven, and that yet my faith can help me get there and accomplish that mission. That's just helped me in every aspect of my life. So it doesn't take away anything from that. And you talk about that: faith, family, finances, all of that stuff. It all fits together when you can have that solid foundation of what your purpose and mission is.
And I think when you get clear on that, I love that you just said nothing left. And I love your analogy in the book where you talk about like a race. So I ran my first, so John has run, I think, several full marathons. I've run one half marathon, but when I ran it, I didn't know what pace I wanted to do. Like, and someone's like, come out hard and fast, because you just don't want to leave anything on the table. And my time was much better than I thought it would be. And right now I'm like, I think I could maybe do a little bit better. Dang it. Like, son of a gun. I got to work on this. I think I can do a little bit more. But your point is, we don't want to do that at the end of our lives. We don't want to say, I think I could have done more. So tell me more about that. And like I don't want to leave anything on the table. And then I want to tie that to, you talk a lot about fears and really a different way of thinking about fear, what we think real fears are versus what they really are. So kind of tie those together, leaving nothing on the table and fear.
Yeah. And I think, again, racing was a great analogy for me. And there is a lot of fear there. If I ran the race the same way every time. It's not the smartest way to run the race, by the way. I would start, straight out to the front. I just always bolt to the front, just my personality. But there's a fear there. Like, if I work really hard now, it's going to hurt too much, or I'm going to fail, or I'm going to fall behind, or whatever. And sometimes there is a balance there. Obviously you need to have a balance, and you need to have, that pace of life, and we don't want to burn out or anything like that. But we also don't want to have the fear of failure that's going to hold you back. We don't have the fear of what might happen or whatever. If we go all in and we try our very best, I always say that phrase, try your best and trust in God's grace to do the rest. That the goal of running the race is not to beat everyone else. It's not to finish first. It's to finish with nothing left to give. And the same is true about life. That we can go through life and not use the gifts and talents that we were given. We can go through life and have a lot of regrets because I'll do that later, I'll do that tomorrow, or I'm not good enough, or what if I fail, or what if people say this? So many times our fear of failure, our fear of the unknown gets in the way of us striving for great things, or dreaming big, or setting big goals. And if I set a big goal and I don't make it there, but I tried my very best, that's success for me. I gave my very best. But there's no easy way out of the race. I always remembered that if I give in to my body's demands to slow down and avoid the pain, then later on I was going to regret it. And I'm going to be in that mind. I'm like, I could have done better if I would have just pushed through that, so You're going to face the pain either way. But that pain of regret, I feel like, hurts worse than the pain of going all in and giving that best effort. That's always going to, you're always going to be happier in the long run if you go all in.
What was the hardest moment? Like what's like, didn't think we were going to do it.
I got
like
it,
we had to quit.
This is an easy question, actually, and it popped right into my head. And roughly around day 7, it's 125 degree temperature every day, where we're running through deep sand. And by the way, we only had 2 showers the entire 111 days. So we're already a week into it, diving into the abyss. Our bodies are tired. My 2 teammates are very dehydrated, so they're on IVs at the end of the day, every day. Hollywood is literally calling me on the sat phone saying, hey, so sorry, you guys are doing your best, but we're thinking we may have to pull the plug on this thing because we're not covering very much ground. Like, we're falling apart. Support vehicles blew up, like people are quitting, like there's a lot of stuff going on, and it is almost none of it is good. And, that day was the hardest day. And what I recognize, going back to the beginning of our conversation today, is my attachment to the outcome was so significant. I felt huge pressure. Millions of dollars had been invested. Hundreds of people, their belief in me was put forward in this project. And I felt the pressure of having to succeed. And success to me only meant getting to the other side of the Sahara Desert, at the Red Sea. That was the only version of success I could see. And what I recognized is, just like with the one day at a time mantra that everyone knows from recovery, what I had to do was get up on day 8 and focus on the miles that were right in front of me, because those were the only ones I could run, Phil. I couldn't run the miles of next week or next month. I needed to focus on the miles that were right in front of me. And if I ran those, then I got to run the ones the next day. And so I focused on running a marathon in the morning, and that's all I thought about. Took a little break at lunch, got up in the afternoon, focused on running a second marathon in the afternoon. And that was my only thought, and there was nothing else in the world for me except that and my teammates and just making our way across the desert. And by the way, I did take the battery out of the sat phone and I stuffed it deep into my duffel bag so that nobody could reach me for a week. And magically, we began to get momentum. And one day at a time, we started to make our way across the desert. And it was still very hard. But I will also say this, the human body is so unbelievably resilient. And we, as human beings, we quit things in moments. In other words, we think we're having a hard period of time, but very often we quit the race. We leave the job. We quit the marriage. We quit these things when there's a really hard moment, when if we can just learn to let that moment pass by gently and gracefully, it doesn't mean it goes away, but we take the pressure off of that moment. We do the things that we need to do to heal, and we get on with, the rest of it. And I think that was the hardest day, though. And that was the best lesson that I ever learned.
I think balance is bullshit. Unless
Amen.
you want to be mediocre at everything, then balance is great. I'm saying integration, which means how do I set up my game to where I'm like everything that I'm doing is kind of working towards the greater vision and focus. So, for example, but my husband and I are entrepreneurs. And part of that is, it's very helpful because we are always talking about vision and each other's goals and how can we support each other. But when I'm going on even like vacation, sometimes it's stacked with, I'm doing a speaking engagement there the week before. And then I'm getting together with friends. And getting together with those friends is oftentimes people that I am doing business with, but I also love and appreciate them. So I've set up and designed my life to where there isn't just these separate silos that don't connect with each other. Everything connects with each other.
Man, balance is bullshit. That might be the episode title. But honestly, I've talked about this and I love it so much because I think it's so important, because we have to live a balanced life. Then you're not thinking about how things are intertwined and connect to each other, and you're truly thinking in silos. Balance is BS, right? And you need to be thinking about how all these things impact each other, because they do. You can't just stop one and start the other, and that's not how it works. And it reminds me of Jesse Itzler. I saw him talk. I'm sure you know who Jesse Itzler is, but he said life is like a Rubik's Cube, and you got all these complexities, and they're all impacting each other in different ways. But once you figure it out, it becomes simple. And once you can get clear on your vision and how these things to connect to each other, it can become simple over time. So I just thought of that analogy too. So
I love that. Yeah.
Thanks for the addition, because that was you struck a chord with me there. I want to talk about two more things really with our time. One is there's phases to an entrepreneurial journey, and you talked about that a lot, and that was really impactful for me. And then two, and later I want to come back to, okay, we build this vision now for our life and our company, but how do we translate that to our family or our team or whatever it is? So we'll get there. So hang on. But before we do, you kind of went through these stages of your entrepreneurial journey yourself. And I think that's why you can connect with people so well on this, because I think we all go through these phases, and I'm somewhere in there too. So tell us about these phases.
Yeah, this was something that, well, I call it the 3 stages of entrepreneurial evolution. And so even before, working with the entrepreneurs that we do now, even in my company, Conscious Copy, all we did was work with entrepreneurs. Growing up, it was all I was around. And I've always been really fascinated with patterns. So, and a little more context, with my father, he is an entrepreneur, but specifically brilliant when it comes to tracking cycles, right? Cycles in different industries, cycles in real estate, cycles in commodities. And I've gotten to see for myself, I've been really fascinated of seeing the cycles or the patterns of entrepreneurs. And at this juncture, I haven't met an entrepreneur that hasn't gone through a version of this process. So at this point, this is my hypothesis. And unless there's some snowflake that changes it, it's very consistent. And the stages of evolution, they're kind of like psychological stages. Not every entrepreneur gets through to stage 3, and your financial situation isn't connected necessarily to the stage you're in. It's more so how you create in the world. What is your perception around creating in life and creating in business? So stage 1 is where I call it condition driven, where we unconsciously build our life and our business around our insecurities. What does that mean? Maybe as a young kid, there was a lot of instability and a lack of financial security. And there was some sort of decision that you made as a kid that was like, I am never going to have this level of instability or insecurity ever again. I'm going to do whatever it takes in my life to not have this. And so the condition-driven stage is you're really running away from. You're trying to avoid something in your past that created a lot of pain and hurt, but then you build your business in order to protect yourself from that. And so maybe you build the really big real estate empire from being able to protect yourself from that wound. And the fuel here is usually fear. And as I mentioned, avoiding. And it's like a pushing away.
Yep.
You're playing someone else's game, and you're trying to win at someone else's game, usually a parental figure or someone growing up that told you that you couldn't do whatever it was that you wanted to do.
Sometimes being afraid can be good, as it sounds like you read. I still have a fear of letting my teammates down. I still think about that. I still use it as some fuel. I think it can be paralyzing if it's too much of your motivation, if it's too much of what you think about. So it's like a lot of things in life. It's just not black and white. It's very, very gray. There's a lot of nuance to it. And I think the fear thing is too. It can work as a useful fuel to create, like work as a forcing function to be overly prepared, to ensure that you don't let your teammates down. Literally right before this we connected, I was with my team. We're preparing for a big workshop we're getting ready to do in Charleston, South Carolina in 2 weeks. I mean, there's fear. I don't want to let my teammates down. We're doing this together. We both have to be, we all have to show up really prepared and really ready to go. It's a huge opportunity for us. It's a big group. It could lead to a lot more work after that if we do a good job. And so, yeah, there's some natural fear. I view it more of like Jim Collins' productive paranoia from his book, Great by Choice. I am almost always productively paranoid. I think that's been helpful for me in sports and keynote speaking and hosting a podcast and everything, right? And so it's just figuring out how you can use that to benefit you. But you first have to really know yourself in order to do that. So it takes a high level of awareness to understand how to best use fear, I think, as positive fuel as opposed to maybe the dirty fuel that could end up being paralyzing.
And I think, we hit on this a little bit, but when we think about fear, in my opinion, a lot of times fear is not internal, it's external, or I should say external thoughts, what other people are going to think. And a lot of our fears are external versus internal. And I want to tie this to the prior discussion too of, excellence is, in my opinion, internal, success is external, right? There's a lot, the score that matters is internal, not external. And I think life, so, Tim Kite, we talked about that a little bit, E plus R equals O, you're familiar with that. But there's events of life, there's response, and there's outcomes. But outcomes are external things we want. But how I think about this is there's life and there's your behaviors, there's how you live. And that's where we need to focus only is what we do, how we live, our internal, like what we're doing or what we're thinking about and what we're doing ourselves, not the results we get. If we do that, I think we'll get the results, but we have to separate from those. So let's talk about this, just your take on all the fear, all the success, excellence, and internal versus external. And really, I think there's you said, hey, there's so many ways to measure ourselves in society right now, right? There's so many ways to measure our external results, which I think leads to all kinds of issues and anxiousness and anxiety and, many, many problems. But tell me your take on this whole like internal, external, and how you put that into action.
The book probably should have been titled The Score That Matters Most, because I do think the scoreboard does matter, especially if you're in sports. If you lose too many games, you get fired. Mike Gundy just got fired at Oklahoma State. He's given half of his life to that place. He's lost too many games. So it does matter. You still, if you're going to play a game, you might as well try to win. I'm very competitive. Brooke Cup's very competitive. So I don't think there's anything wrong with wanting to win the game. We do want to win the games when we play. My high school age daughter plays volleyball, and we talk about that, right? Like we really focus on controlling what she can control is her effort, her attitude, her being a great teammate and a captain for her teammates, right? That's all really, really important. But that's really what the internal stuff is what's within your control versus what's not. And what's within your control is how you choose to show up each day, how you choose to be there and serve your teammates, how the attitude you bring to it, how hard you choose to work, the values that you choose for yourself, intentionally living those values out. All of these things are within your control. And so that's really what the intrinsic element of it is are you focusing on what's within your control consistently? Ryan Holiday talks about this with stoicism. It's similar. Are you focused on those elements? And we believe, and I think it's been proven given the records of the people we've worked with and what we've done, that if you get really, really good and really, really focused on what is within your control, the results usually take care of themselves. Not always, but usually they will. It's fascinating to see that the people who are really, really good and really, really clear at focusing on their internal scoreboard, right? As Bill Walsh said, champions behave like champions long before they win a championship, right? That his book's called The Score That Takes Care of Itself. Is very, very similar ethos of a way of showing up. And so we try to help people focus on the things that's within their control. And then it's cool to see when the results end up taking care of themselves, whether it's a company that's shooting for a big valuation or a certain revenue target. We understand the revenue target's out there, right? That's the state championship or the national championship. We understand that that's there. We're not going to focus on that. We're going to focus on the actual daily behaviors that we then believe the result will end up being that, but we're not really focused on that. We're focused on the intrinsic stuff.
Tell us a little bit more about your backstory and how you got into what you call lifestyle investing.
Yeah, it's interesting. People ask me all the time, what does that mean? What does lifestyle investor or lifestyle investing mean? And really, for me, it was just trying to get alignment in my life, that I wanted to live a life that was on purpose and not on default, and that I could, be intentional with the choices that I wanted to make, the way I wanted to, build a family, the way we wanted to live and go through life together. And so the reason that, this came into fruition is because I, as an entrepreneur, I remember early days of several different businesses where I would tell people I'm a business owner, but really my business owned me many times over in several different industries, several different businesses. And I think there was just a tipping point one time. I mean, I remember, being in my office. It was, I was young, I was in my 20s, but it was like 10 p.m. on a Friday night. And my friends were like, "Hey, let's go out. We're all going to the bars and, come meet us." And I just remember being like, "Hey, I really can't right now. I'm in a season where I'm still in the office. I'm going to go home. I'm probably going to get 6 hours of sleep. I'm going to wake up. I'm going to do it again on a Saturday. But this isn't the season that I want in perpetuity. This is going to be short-lived. I really want to own my time. I want to divorce time from money. I want to build a better business with better systems and better people. I, actually want to graduate from business owner to being a capital allocator. I want to be an investor. I want to own assets that produce income. And some of those assets, they can and they are businesses, but, there's other ways. And I just wanted to divorce that time equals money, because that's how I was living at that time. And even though maybe I was making more money than my friends at certain points, as the business grew, it also required more of my time, right? So I worked harder to make more. And luckily I was very aggressive with investing from early on. But I just remember saying, hey, when I have a family, when I get married, when I have, a daughter, this is going to be way different. I'm going to have boundaries. I'm not working on weekends. I'm not working on the evenings. We're going to have family dinners. I'm going to be at all the sporting events. This season is great for now, but this season won't continue. And I'm going to get smarter and better.
Yeah. Wow. There's a lot there. So first of all, I think there's an important takeaway from that is having a recognition of what season you're in, where you're at in your life. First of all, by the way, lifestyle investing doesn't mean I'm going to sit on the beach and just hang out and do nothing too, because what I heard is alignment in life, different areas of life, but also on purpose and being intentional. And that needs to work for you and whatever you want in your life. If that means hustling hard and having the impact in business or in your faith or whatever, or is it family and travel, you define that, but then understand money, understand it as a tool to enable that. And as you say, divorce it from your time. Your time should be tied to being on purpose with your time, with what you want to do.
Yeah, I love that. And I think, I'm lucky to have had some great mentors. I'm lucky that I have always loved reading and I got into it super early. So even people were mentors that didn't know they were mentors, authors and so forth. But, I've just always been hungry to learn, and I'm the best copycat out there. I find something that someone does that I think is great and I can mimic to the nth degree, and I can, kind of assemble. You give me a blueprint and I can run that playbook. And so that's really what I did. I did that from the standpoint of scaling companies, systematizing companies, to, allocating capital and investing in a way that created passive income. I had some great people I got to learn from. But yeah, money's a tool, and it's also a magnifying glass. Who you are is going to shine through that. So you often see, you hear people that are like, oh, they changed when they had a lot of money. Well, no, that's just really who they were and how they were. Money just has magnified it. And I'm just hoping my values always magnified in a complimentary way.